Hey there YouTube, it's Michael with Xenon Tech Tutorials again. This week I'm going to be going over ADFS setup. Last week I did AD sync and password sync. This week I'm going to be going over Federation in conjunction with Office 365. I'm not going to be going over exactly how to set up the ADFS and the proxy servers. Maybe down the road if I do videos on Azure specifically. But basically, I'm on 2012 R2 as I have been for the past few videos. It's just the ADFS role on the Federation server, and on the proxy server, you need the remote access role. And then when you go to the options in the remote access, you need the web application proxy role. And that's really all you need. It is always recommended to have 2 servers of each, 2 ADFS, 2 proxy for failover purposes. For the sake of this video, I've only done 1 of each. It will still configure just the same. Just for redundancy and failover purposes, like I said, it's recommended you have 2 of each because in my scenario, if this was a live environment and one of them fails, I'm out of luck and I've got a huge problem. So always do 2 of each. So I'm going to go through this not in a matter of changing the user sign-in method, but as if I was doing ADFS from scratch. Most of it is going to be the same. If you want to reset the AADConnect configuration, what you're going to need to do first is go ahead and view hidden files and folders. And once you do that, you can go into C and program data, and there will be a persisted state XML file in here. Just go ahead and either change that to .old, take it out of the folder, delete it, any way to change that, and AADConnect will run as if it hasn't been ran before. So I'm going to go through not the express settings. I did end up reinstalling this as part of a separate issue. So I'm just going to go through this again really quickly here. And give me a second here, let me see what it's talking about. Okay. That might have been something left over from the previous install. So it's going to try to install a few things that it sees is already installed. So one thing I do apologize. I'm just going to pause it here. This takes a couple minutes to install. Once it does, then I'll go ahead and restart. So we're back here. Instead of password synchronization or do not configure, we're going to choose Federation with ADFS. This just mentions here that to run ADFS setup through this tool, it needs to be 2012 R2, which my servers are. That's ADFS 3.0. 2008 R2 servers are ADFS 2.0. 2012 is 2.1, and this is 3.0. If you're doing an earlier version of ADFS, you need to do the old manual configuration for it. So, like I said, this is going to be the same as it was last week. And this is going to go ahead and check the domains. And then I'm going to go ahead and connect to the on-prem again. Alright, and then it's going to bring me up to the Azure AD sign-in after it goes through and checks everything here. So this, once again, just shows me my domains in 365. I'm not going to really explain too much on this. This is all the same thing as last week's video. And what you can do here now, you can choose to do password synchronization as a failsafe. Basically, say I'm in an environment like this where I only have 1 server of each and ADFS breaks for whatever reason. If I can still get to the ADFS server, and if I can't, there's other ways that I can do it, but basically I can still disable ADFS and then password sync is already in place. You don't actually, when the domain is set to a status of federated, ADFS will always take over. So password sync would just run in the background as a failsafe. You would never actually see it unless ADFS broke. For the sake of the video, it doesn't really matter what I do with it, so I'm just going to leave that unchecked for now. So now here is where I actually configure the ADFS. Now this PFX certificate that I have here is on all the servers, so I can either browse out to the file, or I can just say use a certificate installed on one of the Federation servers. So either one that I do, I'm just going to go ahead and search for my ADFS. And the one that I'm going to use is the wildcard. And it recognizes here that it is a wildcard certificate, so it's going to ask me what I want the subject name to be. I'm just going to do FS. So it's going to be fs.michaelazure.com. Next on there. And now I browse out to the ADFS servers again. Once again, I only have one server here, not what you want to do. I'm just doing it for the sake of the video. Now it says here that you don't actually have to do the proxy servers, but if you intend to have any sort of external access, then you do need the proxies. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And oh, just as a side note here, that's just green check mark. This says here, I believe this is because it's seeing that I already installed the remote access role and the web application proxy on that server, so it's saying that it's going to overwrite the configuration. There is no configuration that I put on there. It's just seeing that it was already installed. So these are domain admin creds on-prem. Obviously, domain admin or above will work. I just put in my enterprise admin creds, since it's the only set of creds I have anyway. So it's going to go through, once again, just pulling my Azure AD domains, which there's only one. Azure AD is the Office 365 Active Directory. So now this is here that is set to status of managed, which, what I mentioned before, is password sync or no configuration. It's going to set it to a status of federated. So I'm going to hit next here, and before I actually configure, I'm going to do a couple different things here. So first of all, I'm going to go to the ADFS server, which I already have minimized. So the ADFS server, the internal IP is 10.0.0.8. So when an internal client connects to ADFS, it never hits the proxy server. It goes straight to the internal ADFS server. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to open up the DNS here. Go into domain controller 2 and in my forward lookup zones. Now I already have here, and I apologize, this one's here. This was an old record from when I was configuring ADFS a while ago. So I already have ADFS1 pointing to 10.0.0.8, but I also set fs.michaelazure.com to point to that same server, so I need to create a record for that as well. So the name is just going to be fs 10.0.0.8. Add host, and I'm done with that. Now I'm done with the internal DNS. There is one last thing that I have to do, and I'm going to go ahead and let this configure while I do the other piece. So also in the proxy server, I have the external IP 13.67.235.29. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over my GoDaddy DNS, and I'm going to bring this back off screen for just a second so I can sign back in. And I'm going to show you how to configure it on your external DNS. If you have GoDaddy, you should be able to follow along pretty easily. Any other registrars, it's adding an A record basically to your the domain that you're configuring, pointing to that FS domain, or whatever you set that to be. I set FS just because that's what I wanted to. That can literally be anything you want it to, so long as you have a wildcard certificate or the SANs on the certificate match the domain. It can be ADFS dot, it can be FS dot, it can be STS dot, it can be anything you want. You just need to be consistent with that basically. So I'm going to go over here, and I don't really have an issue showing you the IP address since that's GoDaddy's IP, and I don't actually have a website set up here. So I'm going to go to add a record, and I'm going to select the record type, which like I said is an A record. The host is just going to be FS. You don't need to put in the full .michaelazure.com or .domain.com unless your registrar makes you do that. So this IP address, not the domain controller, but the proxy server itself, is 1367. So let me do that. Is going to be 13.67.235.29. 235.29. Let me just make sure that's correct. So once that's correct, I can go ahead and I can save that. And then once this saves, we see my new record here, FS, pointing to 1367.235.29. So I'm going to put that back on my other screen. And this is still configuring itself, which is perfectly fine, as that DNS record for GoDaddy will take a little bit of time to set in anyway. What you can do to check propagation, one personal favorite site of mine for DNS propagation check is what'smydns.net. I like this one because it's a regular public site. There's nothing special needed to get to it, and this gives you global servers, and each time you come back to this page, if you leave the page and come back, it will give you a different list of servers. So fs.michaelazure.com, I want to select, I don't need extra settings, I can do the A record, and you can do any record you want here, but I want A. And we can already see that since, just in my experience, GoDaddy is very fast with propagating DNS records, it's pretty much already out there. So this is still configuring. I'm going to go ahead and, once again, I apologize, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video until this is done, so I'm not just sitting on here. And I will restart the video once this finishes configuring. So now this is the point here, which is where I created those records, as it actually asks if you want to do the verification of the record. You can elect not to do it if for whatever reason you don't want to. I don't know why you would not want to elect to do it to make sure it's configured properly. Before I do that, there is one thing I did not mention before. On the proxy server itself, what we need to do so it knows how to communicate with the ADFS server is we need to add a record in the host file on the proxy server pointing to the ADFS. To do this, you want to run Notepad as an admin so you can actually edit the file. So we're going to open. It is going to be in C, Windows, System 32, drivers, and etc. Now you see it's blank. I need to show all files because it's not actually given a proper file type. What I do here is, and this is just for my own sake, I always line it up. It was 10.0.0.8 and it was fs.michaelazure.com. That's the host file. I'm going to save that, X out of that, and I'm going to go from here and I'm going to go back to the domain controller where this is running. So I'm going to go ahead and verify this now. And you can see here it does the intranet, which was the internal DNS I configured, and it also checks the extranet, being the internet record that I configured. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this, and now I'm going to bring up the Office 365 portal within here. And what I'm going to do, just because I can't remember what password I set on this, I have one of two passwords I usually set for everything. I'm going to go ahead and reset this password one last time to a shorter password that I know will be easy enough to remember. And I don't need to do that because the account was never locked. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, the user doesn't have any licenses or anything like that in 365. I'm going to go back to portal.office.com, and it may not kick in right away. It does take a few minutes sometimes for the federation status to kick in, but let's see if this does. Okay, and that is kicking in. So now, when you're running Internet Explorer internally, by default, you're not going to get the regular ADFS page. You're going to get a Windows security prompt. And this might still be taking a little bit, but let me go ahead and actually test it externally for you also here. So let me do this. And I'm going to do michael.kelly@michaelazure.com. And when you do it externally, normally it's going to hit the proxy server. However, there is one thing I just remembered that I forgot to do. I need to actually open up the proxy server to accept requests from the internet. So for that, I'm actually going to log into my Azure portal to bring this up. I'm going to bring this off screen for a minute as I use a different account for Azure login, of which I don't want to make public right now. And basically, what I'm showing you now is basically only going to help if you're actually using Azure for your servers. Otherwise, basically, you need to allow rules in your firewall to the external IP address of the proxy server. So I need to take a look here. I need to go to my virtual machines, and I need to take a look at the name of the network security group that is tied to this. So go to proxy 1, and it gives me the information here. It doesn't show me the network security group, but let me take a look here. You don't need to go to the network security group classic, it's just the regular network security groups. Okay, so I know proxy 1 is an older one. The one with the extra numbers are actually the ones that I want to use. So I don't need to add anything for the ADFS. I'm just going to go to the proxy, do a new inbound security rule. I'm going to add a rule, and for the sake of this, not really recommended. Once again, I'm just going to allow all HTTPS connections in because this is just a test lab. Source port range doesn't matter. Destination port range needs to be 443. Have it set to any and allow. Go ahead and do that. And it's going to install the rule, which really shouldn't take any more than a couple of seconds. Okay, so now, see, now this timed out because the rule wasn't in there. So let me go ahead and get out of this and then reopen Chrome and Incognito. And then what I should get from here, michael.kelly@michaelazure.com. And this should redirect me unless my computer hasn't seen the new DNS record yet. $13.67. Okay, it took a bit longer than it should have, but it did redirect. And then from here, I go and put in the password, and then this will send me back to Office 365, and here we are. So, not sure why the internal one wasn't working. I'll probably take a look at that one in a minute. Knowing my luck with certain things, I'm sure you guys will have a lot better luck with that than I did. So, I'm just going to try this one more time. But all in all, that's about all there is for the ADFS setup if you're using ADFS 3.0. It's a lot more streamlined than it used to be. Almost typed the wrong domain there. It's a lot more streamlined than it used to be with ADFS 3.0. So this is still at Michael Azure. So I'm still going to put in the full domain because it should work either way. But when you're putting the email address into 365 to log in, just regular 365 login without ADFS requires you to put in the whole email address. So it's kind of just force of habit at this point for me. So now I'm thinking that this might be failing either due to internet options that I don't have set properly, or the fact that I'm logged into the machine itself with a different account. But these are separate options that I'm not really going to cover too much here. What I'm going to do is I'm at least going to add that and fs.log michaelazure.com. All right, and that's that's not adding because I put in michaelazure.com, so it should take everything else besides that as well. So I'm going to do this one more time, but other than that, I know it's a local setting that I don't have configured correctly. But I'm going to do this one last time, and then that'll be about it for this week's video. Like I said, if you guys do have any questions for me, as always, let me know in the comments. I will be putting these on LinkedIn as I usually do. And I'm just going to do this one last time. Alright. Not sure why that's not working internally, but you did see it take externally, so I'm going to go over these settings and figure out what's going on later on. And if I find anything, I'll put it in the description. But this is, my usual videos. Next week, I'm going to start to touch on a few things Exchange related. What I'm probably going to do between this week and next week is actually get an Exchange server installed on a new machine and go over some of the Exchange Online features, and I might start to touch on some of the hybrid scenarios. But as always, let me know if you guys have any questions. Like I said, either in the comments or on LinkedIn, and I will see you